All right. Good. Hello.
Yes.
Sign on. How close do I have to be to this? All right. Good. Apparently, you're going to get a lot of this. Welcome to the afternoon panel. Working still? Can anyone hear me? Is it recording? You're good. I'm going to guess. Okay. Doesn't sound as loud. We're here to talk about cryptocurrency legislation, and particularly, obviously, the current legislation that has come out of Crypto Week earlier this summer. Before we do that, we'll go ahead and introduce the panelists so you know who's giving you whatever opinions we are sharing. My name is TJ Mihill. I'm an attorney here in Atlanta. I work in all aspects of business and IP law and litigation, and I've been presenting here for lots and lots of years on the track. So I will be moderating today's panel, and I will go ahead and let my panelists introduce themselves. We'll start over here with Rich.
Hi, my name is Rich Gatz. But my name is Rich Gatz. I'm an attorney as well. I actually work in the cyber insurance space, leading the team cyber claim adjusters, but we focus on data privacy, cybersecurity, as well as media. Also, an old school crypto guy. I bought my first Bitcoin in 2013. You know, I don't have all the Bitcoins I bought in 2013. If I did, I would probably be on my personal island. But, you know, very happy to be here today.
Isaac.
I'm Isaac Sheff. I'm a computer scientist. My research is in distributed systems and security, and I've worked on some blockchain and cryptocurrency projects. And I've been doing DragonCon panels for a couple of years now. Happy to be here.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Kurt Opsahl. I am the Associate General Counsel for Civil Liberties and Cybersecurity Policy with the Filecoin Foundation. Prior to that, for many years, I was working at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, where I was the General Counsel. So I know a lot about civil liberties work, but my new job, and which is a cryptocurrency incentive system for network attached storage, I've learned a bit about cryptocurrency legislation. So anyway, happy to be here and talking with you about the recent trends.
So as we go through today, as I said, the core of the panel will be the current legislation. If you have any questions about anything else, feel free to come ask. If you have questions about this, feel free to come up and ask at the mic at any time. We can take questions as we go along rather than try to wait to the end and squeeze them in and then forget and not leave you guys time for questions. So feel free to just step up to the mic if you have a question, if you'd like to get some more information or follow up on something. You do have to come up to the microphone though, because we're recording the session, and if you say it from back there, we might hear you, but no one else will. So if you do have any questions, approach the mic, and we'll start the panel off with an overview of what we're talking about. So Kurt, if you could kind of give us a 30,000-foot view of the current.
Absolutely. So this year there have been several bills proposed about cryptocurrency, and to give a little bit of a sort of a preview background where things for a long time there were some legal questions about what cryptocurrencies were and how the law applied. This is a thing that happens often with new technologies. If the law was written with a different paradigm of how things worked, and then when a new thing comes along, you have sort of battles of the metaphors. It's more like this, it's more like that. How do you fit it in? And one of the questions was sort of what type of thing a digital asset was. Was it a security? Was it a commodity? Was it something else? And there, those are not the three possible options, but there are, well, I guess something else covers all the space, but like there were additional subcategories of something else. And this had a lot of effect on what sort of regulations would apply, how that would work. And for a period of time, there were not laws or rules crafted for this, but there was more things like staff guidance and also a bit of rules by rulemaking by enforcement, regulation by enforcement, where legal actions would be brought against some of the cryptocurrency related entities, and so many of them were looking for clarity about their legal situation. Thus, one of these bills is the aptly named Clarity Act, trying to provide that. There are basically two major types of bills. One, which the Clarity Act is, it's a market structure bill. It provides an answer to what type of thing a digital asset is. It's basically something else, but it's called a digital commodity is where they're ending up. Will have rules for exchanges, for what sort of disclosures are necessary, sort of how to operate in that space. The Clarity Act bill is proposed by the House of Representatives. It has passed the House of Representatives. There's bipartisan support on that. Every once in a while, something can be a nonpartisan issue. And then in the Senate likes to do its own thing. They don't like to just sign on to whatever the House has done. So they have a bill that is the Responsible Financial Innovation Act, which is thematically broadly similar to the House Clarity Act, but it has different languages, like a primary difference in approach with the RFIA is it gives a lot of authority to the SEC to make rules as opposed to telling them, or as opposed to putting it directly in the statute, while the Clarity Act has more things directly in the statute, which provides a little bit more certainty about what the result will be. And in addition, the CFTC, the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, will have a regulatory role for this new kind of thing, a digital commodity. Do various things to turn your digital asset into a digital commodity such that it is clear to start being traded on exchanges and have that regulatory certainty that folks were looking for. And we can go drill down in details, but I'm just starting out with the 30,000 foot view. And I'll flip to the other flavor of bill. This one actually passed into law. So there were a House and Senate bill on stable coins. Stable coins are a type of cryptocurrency that is designed to hold a stable value, usually pegged to US dollar is most common, but there's stable coins that are pegged to other fiat currencies. And there's also have been some flavors of so-called stable coins, which have some fancy algorithm that is supposed to keep them stable, and sometimes those have gloriously failed and fall flame. May or may not call those stable coins, but that is a flavor. So the House had the Stable Act that they proposed. The Senate had the Genius Act. Get it? Stable, genius. Both of them were stablecoin bills. Ultimately, the Senate one was the one that passed with some reconciliation between the two houses. So that actually is law, while the Clarity/RFIA has not yet passed and is still being worked on. With the stablecoin law, the Genius Stablecoin Act, this provides a structure and normalization for stablecoins that are backed by currency, backed by short-term, highly stable investments, treasury bonds or bills and such. Algorithmic stablecoins are not part of this bill. So if you have an algorithmic stablecoin, you're not given that regulatory clarity, and you're not to be traded on U.S. exchanges. So that's basically, the some of it. It is trying to make a stable coin that is well backed by hard assets, and if it fits all these requirements, then it is regularized. It can be traded in U.S. exchanges. There's a third bill that might move forward this year, which is is a bill to prevent the U.S. from issuing a central bank digital currency. Some countries, notably China, have issued their own cryptocurrency that is pegged to their own fiat currency, the U.S. has not been very seriously thinking about making a central bank digital currency. So this was more of a symbolic bill than rather addressing stopping something that was in motion. The concerns, well, we'll go into more detail, but the main concern around a central bank digital currency is that becomes a government controlled surveillance coin. Bill was trying to stop that. So that's the 30,000-foot overview of it.
All right, well, I have some other good questions to get into, but at first, I think we all saw Isaac's face. So I believe you have something to add to the topic of stablecoins.
So on the subject of algorithmic stablecoins, they're perfectly good stablecoins, just using cryptocurrency as a means of keeping track of who owns stuff. Classic example would be JPM coin. JPM coin is on their own little blockchain ecosystem that most people aren't actually allowed to touch. And it's backed by $1 in a JPM, the JP Morgan bank account. It's just a fancy front end for their bank. An algorithmic stablecoin is backed by something else other than a bank account full of dollars, just a pile of dollars. Traditionally, it's been backed by a Ponzi scheme, but you could in principle back it with any other manner of fiction. They are as unstable as whatever they're backed. So I wouldn't care to call those stable coins much as something else coins.
Yeah, and stablecoins are not. So the one that was sort of prominent, and a lot of people lost a lot of money, was had a mechanism by which if there was two of them, and if one went down, then that would increase demand for the one that went down, decrease demand for the other one, and so people would theoretically shuffle their money back and forth to stabilize it. That worked until it didn't. It's one of those things that so long as everybody believes in the system and doesn't mess around with it, it can work for a period of time. But if people lose confidence in the thing, and the one that's going down, people are not like, what a deal. They'll be like, oh my God, I'm getting out. And then.
Actually, I have a question about centrally banked digital cryptocurrencies.
Sure.
Mind as well. You mentioned it, and it's on my mind. So, I mean, the US has a central bank. It's the Fed, and it presumably keeps records digitally. I'm assuming they don't use old-timey leather-bound ledgers. And people can move money from one account to another, or at least other people can. I mean, the reason it's not a mass surveillance tool is that they don't let civilians have accounts, much as I would like to, because they have great interest rates. Would this bill ban the Fed?
Well, I'm sure there's some people who like the idea of banning the Fed. This came from actually libertarian-minded people that probably wouldn't mind that. That was not what those intended to do. Specifically, which would be more of the big blockchain-y features of a coin and be in individual wallets spent at stores in a way so maybe not transferring it like you would with the Fed, but more like with your phone master.
So this sounds like banning the Fed from having convenience features and/or having the Fed's excellent interest rates be available to normal people.
Well, so it's an interesting, this is one of the things I wanted to bring up today, is the previous administration was very pro central bank digital coin. And now we have completely reversed track, although again, no one was making any effort to make one either way in the US. So it is sort of a distinction of policy without any actual practical application. But I think that's an interesting dynamic of what we're looking at with the idea of the federal, a central coin for the US and a real sort of marker of philosophy of the.
In a previous Congress during the prior administration, somebody proposed called an e-cash bill, and it was designed to have some of the convenience features of a stable coin that was operated not by the Fed but by Department of Treasury, but had very strong privacy protections. The idea was to replicate the privacy of cash in a digital currency. It did not go anywhere, so never made it. But I think at least that was an attempt to address the surveillance concerns and give the convenience, and also by moving into Treasury, there's some people who don't like the Fed for other reasons, and so it's that.
I mean, there are some pretty strong privacy technologies available. I work with some folks who work on a project called Nemata, which allows you to deposit assets of various kinds and trade them. And Nemata itself, the holders of it, cannot see who owns what at any given time. They can see that an IP address made a trade. That's about it. But individuals can prove what they own at the end of the day. I wonder how that actually feeds into some of the legislation from earlier. If you can't see who's trading or what is being traded on some of these exchanges, are rules about those exchanges that you mentioned a minute ago enforceable?
Well, that's it. So, sorry, Jeremy. That's one of the things that I think the Genius Act is trying to address. Because the Genius Act is if you're going to make a stable coin under the Genius Act, back it by US currency or treasury bonds, you have to then follow certain, not all, but some US banking regulations. The anti-money laundering ones
Yes.
being.
AML and KYC are part of stable
I
coins.
was just gonna mention.
But I just to your point, I guess, if it's a stable coin that's issued pursuant to the act and exchange and everything is going on the up and up, then yes, there's the KYC, know your customer, and AML, anti-money laundering, restrictions about that, which do have an impact on financial privacy. Also, no one wants the North Koreans to be able to launder billions of dollars.
But they do though.
And they do.
They do. No, I mean,
But it does not cover a transaction that is wallet to wallet by an individual, not using the exchange. If you have a self-custody wallet and you want to trade with someone else, the self-custody wallet, the act does not reach that.
yeah, I mean, I think something that's really important to, like, think about recent legislation is it's really about making cryptocurrency money. Okay, having it try to fit into a subset of our already existing regulations. So, you guys may or may not be familiar with the US Bank Secrecy Act, right? Which goes over the AML, know your customer type things like that. It's so if you've ever heard like, well, if you spend $10,000, the federal government gets a report, like if you deposit $10,000 in the bank account or something like that. There's essentially a program platform that allows banks and other financial institutions to report suspicious activity. It's called a SAR, suspicious activity report. Government's very good at creative names. And so what we're trying to do is the government's trying to legitimize cryptocurrency while also making it more safe. Okay, and so I think that's when we think about the Clarity Act, the Genius Act, it's really about, okay, can we somehow shoehorn this into our existing systems while also legitimizing cryptocurrency, making, clarifying some of the issues.
And one of the things I think that supports that is the notion of the Genius Act, the frosting on the Genius Act is that you're going to have financial institutions being the ones who are issuing these stable coins. They're going to be backed by the US dollar, they're going to be backed by US treasuries, they're going to be backed by some stable foundation, but they're also going to be issued by known entities and financial institutions that are already dealing in these things. But not necessarily, right? Because
A lot of the tech giants are thinking.
yeah, the act allows for non-financial institutions to be approved to be issuers.
So basically turning them into financial institutions.
You just described becoming a bank.
Right, but what we're now gonna do is make
Well, but
Walmart a bank.
well, I mean,
Already a hospital.
I think what's really important though is in the early days of cryptocurrency, even now, like for instance, I wanted to purchase some Bitcoin ATMs in 2013, okay, in Chicago. And I literally could not get state of Illinois to give me a legal opinion on whether I needed to be a licensed money services business under the US Bank Secrecy Act. Literally, a state's attorney said, I'm not going to tell you what to do here. But it's very difficult to get that type of license. And typically, if you violate the license or have a license, there's like a look back provision. So arguably, could have set up a Bitcoin ATM, did 1,000 transactions, then been fined on each individual transaction, so we have the proper license. Okay, so again, when looking at this, it's legitimizing it, putting it under a current framework or pigeonholing it in a framework and trying to make it work. Where I think something that kind of along those lines is really important to talk about is the difference between cryptocurrency that's considered a security and cryptocurrency that's not.
Don't try to
I can talk about.
Uh,
Sorry about that. Morning. But
but
no, I think it's really important when we're looking at this type of legislation is understanding it's like a lot of the big litigation and government interest in cryptocurrency for the longest time is a certain cryptocurrency a securitized token? Okay, is it something that the SEC should control or is it a commodity or whatnot? And then they kind of mess it all up by saying, oh, for purposes of taxes, it's property. But then also it's a security and there's a special rule the SEC has to like determine that. So when you're looking at developments that are upcoming, does it make it easier for you, a consumer, to understand what is a security or not? If it is a security, and there's a much heightened risk issue in selling trading purposes.
so to just riff on that for a second, this has been one of the challenges for a number of years is that a number of people who were trying to be good actors in this space and going to those like the SEC, the state attorney general, and saying, we would like to do things lawfully, tell us what to do. What do we need to do and register? And we're happy to do it. And they were getting, no, we can't give you the answer on that. You just have to decide what you're going to do, and then we will either sue you or not. And so this happened. The largest U.S. Cryptocurrency exchange is Coinbase, and they had for years been going to the SEC trying to get some direction, trying to do it. Oddly, when they were themselves using traditional securities, they listed on stock exchange, you can buy and sell Coinbase's shares. And as part of that process, they told the SEC what they were planning on doing, and they got approved to be sold as a security for themselves. And then the same SEC who said it was okay for people to invest in them, also said what they were doing was selling unregistered securities, and then sued them for a number of years of legislation. That legislation was resolved just shortly into the new administration. There's quite a sea change in how the administration was looking at this. But the regulation by enforcement is kind of like it is not very good for innovation. If people are trying to innovate but they don't know the rules, and if they go over a line, then they get sued and it's potentially ruinous. And so that makes it either you have to be very okay with risk and going forward anyway, or be very, very cautious. But it's not a good spot to be in for being sort of doing innovation within the rules and being able to advance things as much as you can without going over the line. And the ones who are willing to take some of those risks may have gone too far over the lines. And that's not good for innovation either. So it's not a good system. And so by having this legislation, I think that helps solve for that. Doesn't necessarily cover everything, but it is a big step towards getting to a regularized environment so people know what they're in for and what they need to do to be regularized.
That uncertainty has pushed a number of cryptocurrency-based businesses, foundations, initiatives, including my current employer, basically to Switzerland, because their regulatory environment is a little more predictable.
Well, I think one of the Clarity Act as it currently stands, who knows what we'll actually get, but not go through Senate, but one of the ideas of the Clarity Act as it currently stands to give a little of that clarity. But I think
A little on the nose, isn't it?
yeah, I think what it is going to do is bring under the umbrella of regulation a lot of other brokers or financial entities that weren't otherwise regulated in this space. It's going to be clear what your regulations are, and it's going to be clearer what you have to do. But you may now find yourself facing obligations that you didn't have previously, which is the price of clarity. At least now we know there is no more risk, but it is a broadening of that scope as well.
What other, you're thinking of Switzerland, and that has been very friendly with cryptocurrency companies set up in Switzerland. Also, the EU has already passed and brought into effect their market structure, MiCA markets in crypto assets. And so they have a regulatory scheme that is in place now. Various parts of it are coming online as they develop out the rules and guidelines. It is also providing that, like, here's a set of rules of the road to follow. Has a different approach than the US. The European approach is very much focused on disclosure of information and requiring extensive lists of, I'm not sure if you're familiar with cryptocurrencies, you know that they have a white paper usually as sort of the starting point. The EU also asks for what they call a white paper, but basically it's a completely different document that has all the things that are in the EU legislation that probably very few original white papers have. So people will have to reissue white papers in the next about a year. The U.S. Current approach, and this is true in both the Senate and House, is about decentralization. To sort of get to the point where a digital asset is a full-fledged digital currency, and the various limitations around digital assets that are taken away. You have to show that the asset is sufficiently decentralized. The issuers are no longer in control of the asset. That it has, a marketplace, distributed, decentralized governance, and that is an approach that is in keeping with where U.S. law was under a Supreme Court precedent from the 30s involving selling an interest in oranges grown in an orange grove. That was a case of one of the parties was named Howey, and so it's called a Howey test. And the key thing was there, if you were investing in another person who would use their managerial or entrepreneurial activities in order to profit or not, then that was something that was an investment contract for a security. And if it was not, you were not in, like, it was not going to somebody whose managerial efforts were going to make the value go up, then that was not a security. And so by being decentralized and having the issuer not in control, that made it outside of the Howey test, and the law is providing some clarity on how you get outside that zone, being sufficiently decentralized. But just go back to what we're saying, in MiCA, decentralization is not a major feature. That's not what they're looking for. They don't have a Howey test to begin with. Though decentralization as a whole is good for a variety of reasons.
A little bit confused about what they think decentralization gets you here. Ethereum is considered a decentralized cryptocurrency. It's run by a collection of people and machines called validators who are scattered around the world, and they vote on what to do with each Ethereum. But in some sense, these are a group of people and machines that maintain a ledger and decide on the rules for that ledger. And so is JP Morgan. It's a group of people and machines that maintains a ledger and decides on votes for that ledger. But one of these we call decentralized, and one of these we don't. And I'm unclear on why the legal framework should be different.
So the why is an interesting question. There, I tell you more about the is, and the is in the JP Morgan's case is not decentralized because JP Morgan Inc. or NA is gets to tell those people all what to do, while the Ethereum Foundation does not get to tell everybody who validates Ethereum nodes and such what to do, or will fire you away.
the foundation is neither here nor there, but the set of validators, like JP Morgan Inc., is a group of people that makes decisions collectively.
But it's not though. I mean, you have one centralized authority making decisions on behalf of the blockchain versus a decentralized authority making decisions on behalf of the blockchain.
And this is
What's the difference?
this is truly the tough question that we're trying to ask is what is a group of persons under common control? That is the operative phrase. And so that is the difference. And under the Howey test, whether it was under common control, it was an issue, and under the legislation, whether it's a group of persons under common control is also the question, but there's more description of what makes something. So their like paradigm, I guess, would be a DAO operating where there's on-chain voting by the number of tokens you have, and under the statute, you can't have more than no one person or people under common control can have more than 20% of voting power.
Another one that feels really hard to enforce from a technical perspective.
Well, and I do want to get to, I'd like to get your thoughts on some of that, because we talked a little bit about that before the panel. Before I do though, I know there's a lot of people who've come in since we started. So I do want to just remind you all that we are happy to take questions at any point. If you have any questions or want to raise anything, feel free to come up to the mic at any point, the mic in the middle there. You do have to come up to the mic so that we can record you, but do feel free to come up at any point if you have anything you want to add. But Isaac, I know you had some concerns about both that and the enforceability, applicability of the know your customer processes and the other. We mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I'd like to get a little more of your thoughts on that, the concern about that.
So I'll give you an example. I know some people who are, among other things, trying to build a marketplace for digital assets. The marketplace would be run by a blockchain, which is run by machines and people scattered around the world in many jurisdictions. The machines that run the chain itself don't see anything about who is making what transactions or why or what price. But the marketplace nevertheless tries to do matching of bids and asks at good market prices. There's a lot of fancy cryptography that goes into making this at all feasible, but it would be, the whole point of it is to allow extremely smooth interaction between entities that don't have to pass through humans along the way. Automated systems that buy and sell stuff through a marketplace presumably. And you can't do that if there are know your customer laws. You certainly can't do that if there are reporting laws to the EU about how much of what was sold, because the machine doesn't even know. And that they mostly try to sidestep that question by scattering it through enough legal jurisdictions that no one country can stop them. But
Sounds a little bit like money laundering, bro.
well, it's an excellent mechanism.
Is this
for money
Silk Road
laundering.
2.0, like the digital assets?
Or turning cash.
It's an excellent mechanism for money laundering. It is also a pretty good mechanism for buying and selling assets that represent physical items, but shipping the physical items is still not their problem. I would point out that, I was actually talking to some central bankers last year at a weird cross conference in Austria. And one of them brought up, I think his number was for every $1,000 in money laundering that occurs, we spend $100 on know your customer enforcement, and we catch $1 of money laundering. It know your customer laws as they stand have been ridiculously expensive and ineffective.
Yeah, but I guess at the same time, and I hate you putting me in the government, you asshole.
I didn't try to,
But no, I think that, and this kind of touches on something I deal with. So my company insures cybersecurity risk as well as cybercrime. And so we see hundreds of millions of dollars in damages a year in regards to this. And so, but what's funny to me is that cybercrime is still dwarfed by like non-cybercrime, like just regular, just wire mail fraud and stuff like that dwarfs cybercrime or ransomware. Okay, so I think that at a certain point you do have to try to have some type of legitimate financial system that can try to stop crime. And if you don't have AML or KYC like controls,
it's just the wild, wild west. Like everyone's just gonna be stealing from it.
So, I guess I'll just respond to that a little bit. I know we have a question pending, so I'll make it quick.
We'll get to it, promise.
Is that like, some countervailing things that we need to consider is that what you buy and sell is a window into a lot of things about you as a person. So like, if you care about privacy, if you have an exception such that every transaction that you do is available to be analyzed, you've given up a lot about yourself, and it could be just a combination of your various donations to support causes. It could be the things that you've paid subscriptions for, giving an idea of your political leanings. It could be, your consuming of things which may be lawful, but people look askance upon, that could be used against you, right? So there's a very strong need to have financial literacy. And one of the things about having every transaction tied to a wallet on a publicly available blockchain is if anyone ever figures out whose wallet that is, they know not just their latest transaction, but every transaction they've ever used on that wallet, like their entire financial history. So having strong privacy protections on the blockchain is very important. We've lived with a society with, cash, with $10,000 limits for some deposits, but cash being a pretty anonymized currency. You can go to the post office and get a postal money order and send thousands of dollars through a government agent without giving any ID up to a certain dollar amount. So like, as a society, we have lived with a certain amount of risk. And to Isaac's point, is like, we do have to ask the question about whether these additional surveillance, while useful for stopping crime, is worthwhile given the cost of doing it, and are there better ways to try to stop this crime? So I think we should not just say, well, in our zeal to maximize enforcement, use a expensive, inefficient way that sacrifices everybody's privacy about their transactions.
It's a good question.
Yes.
Yes, I've heard the term, blockchain.
Hang on a second.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I've heard the term blockchain mentioned about 3 times. Now I got involved with that, and, I was, to my understanding, the blockchain is what drove the currency, the coin. So I invested in an account for myself, one of my daughters, and one of my grandsons. And it worked for about a year, and it was growing, and I was planning on just getting all my children and grandchildren involved. Can you explain how the blockchain affects it and how does it work?
Are you discussing specifically Bitcoin, or is it a different type of, because depending upon the cryptocurrency, the blockchain fundamentally differs.
My understanding was that the blockchain basically gathered information. Somebody would have a bunch of computers and so forth.
So it's essentially a ledger. So you could think of it as a recording device that records the transactions on the blockchain. The reason they call it a blockchain is it's actually blocks of transactions that either through proof of work, proof of stake, other kind of validation protocols, basically confirms those transactions on the blockchain. So it's essentially like a bank ledger, but it's actually computed and cryptologically like proven, so it's immutable. It means that you can't change it once a block has
Right.
been created.
Yeah, but after about a year, all my money disappeared.
So,
And, and I was
Sorry.
told that, okay, we'll get back to you and at least give you investment back. So I'm still waiting.
it wasn't like, as you said, a blockchain itself is a technology that various cryptocurrencies use to record their transactions. So, it's not investing in a blockchain like we sort of like investing in bank ledgers instead of the banks. Or it's not really bad ones. But in any event, one of the things to be very cautious about when investing in cryptocurrency is to know what you're doing and work with, at least especially if you're starting out with this, work with reputable organizations, go into like Coinbase. They have a lot of tutorials and things like that about how to do it. Unfortunately, this is an area where there are many people who are grifting, who are scamming, and a classic type of scam would be to get people in investments where they can go to a site online and see a number go up.
Yeah.
And that is just them manipulating the number in the background. They don't. There's nothing actually going up. They've taken your money and are keep milking it until they do what as I say, rug pull and run away. I'm not saying that. I don't know what happened in your particular circumstance, but that is a risk out there, and one should be cautious about where you're investing if you're trying to invest in this technology.
All right,
And if
thank
the returns seem too good to be true, they
Yeah.
might be.
Anyway, it did look good. All right, thank you.
Next question.
Does the Genius Act or Stable Act, or is there other legislation in progress that would regulate or provide clarity around NFTs and how they're handled? Particularly around like sales tax?
Golly. So like, not exactly. So that's certainly not the stablecoin thing. No NFTs. If I recall correctly, in the House bill, there is some talk about digital assets that might be broad enough to encompass NFTs, and that's as a type of digital asset, but that's not the focal point of the legislation. And one of the things I don't really kind of drill down to is tax issues. So,
Yeah, I mean, generally it's considered property, right? So, and then it's just, okay, you bought set amount of property for X and then you sold it for Y. What is the delta? What was the time period in which you bought it? And then you can determine whether short-term or long-term capital gains tax applies. But to my knowledge, there's not, from a legislative perspective, NFTs are dead. So it's, it was all the rage back in the day. But, I'm not familiar with anything that's really particularly on point.
I don't think anything certainly not any of the current crypto push is directly focused on any of that.
Right, but I mean, something to think about though too is depending upon what cryptocurrency you're purchasing and selling NFTs in, there might be either a beneficial or deficient tax basis for it, or like Clarity or the Genius Act might actually benefit you by making how those cryptocurrencies are considered a little bit more clear.
I have a question back referencing to KYC and DAOs in general. I've been pretty heavily involved with DAOs for a little while, and when it comes to like grants that are voted on by DAOs, the big problem that came up was that there could be some sort of like financial liability if you're a large voter on those grants, and if you give money to someone who then does something, a rug pull or something nefarious, are you then financially liable as a voter on that proposal within the DAO? And I just wanted to ask if you guys had any, insight on that or any opinions or.
I got briefly is that there have been some state level things that have tried to create a DAO as a type of entity. The states generally create legal entities like you incorporate in the state or you create an LLC in the state or a nonprofit organization. And so I think Montana, for example, has some legislation about being able to create a DAO. You could also create another type of entity and call it a DAO. But in the general liability world, the advantage of having an LLC, for example, a limited liability corporation or company, is that there are some limits to how much the people who are investing in it or are liable for its access, the advantage of the corporate form. So one of the issues with DAOs has been it's not clear whether you get some of those liability protections, and so thus you might be, and there's also some arguments that you might be subject to a fiduciary duty to do things like cool. And it's very short. It's a lot more behind fiduciary duty than that. But if you don't, like if you go in there and you vote it all to your friends and they go, gamble it away, then that might be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that's very astute because generally, in order to have legal liability, there needs to be some type of privity or relationship. So if you are a part of the entity that is part of the DAO, a lot of people don't know that if you're like a director or officer of a company, you are legally liable for your actions as a director and officer of a company, and you're personally liable. Now, if you're properly incorporated and you have that limited liability, then you might not be liable. But there's a legal kind of thing that's called piercing the corporate veil. Okay, and typically in cases of fraud, massive misrepresentation, material misrepresentation, things like that, or commingling of funds, okay, they can pierce the corporate veil and go after you personally. So I would say, to answer your question, look at the corporate structure, if any. Also, are you just providing funds that are separate from your personal accounts, right? What does the actual DAO contractual agreement say? And then also recognize that if you are part of a fraudulent scheme, that is criminal. So there is a much easier way to have you charged for a crime in this context than, civilly, because if you don't have a contractual or relationship with these other entities, it's very hard to sue you civilly. But if the DAO's committing fraud and you're part of the DAO and they can tie that to you, then that's obviously a very bad day.
Okay, and then, so you're saying like even if it's negligent and you don't have an active relationship with someone who's like,
I mean,
you're
it depends, right? Like it depends. Everyone here is now a lawyer. Every
Yes.
legal question that you will ever answer is it depends.
uh,
Okay. But it really depends. And what I would say is if you are heavily invested in this space and doing things like this, I would find yourself a cryptocurrency legal expert and consult with them.
okay, thank you.
Hello. So projects like Nomada and private decentralized exchanges were mentioned, and that is an area where there's been a lot of regulation by enforcement, as we've seen with the trial of Roman Storm just a few months ago. I'm curious if there's anything on the horizon that would make the regulatory environment more clear if one was interested in publishing code related to such a project.
So are my coworkers.
Yeah, fine. In the United States, there is that doctrine of code is speech. And so what you're talking about is publishing code, then yeah, that is something which is strongly protected as a speech act. Operating the code and doing other things, especially like taking custody and so on, complicate the matters because that's not a pure speech activity. So one of the things that came up in the context of Tornado Cash was, the software itself was placed on the list of specially designated nationals, which may seem odd because it's software, not a national. And ultimately, many people questioned that, and ultimately, court agreed that it was not properly upon that list. And
Real quick, the SDN list is essentially a sanctions list run by the Department of Treasury and OFAC. If you are an entity or person placed upon it, a United States citizen or entity is unable to do business with you.
Right, so it's a pretty severe list to be on. You're supposed to make sure that they never do business with any on that list. And one of the things they said was because it was an immutable smart contract, on the blockchain, it couldn't be changed by the authors after it was put out there. That it was not, you could not put it on it. You had to go after the people who were operating it and make a case out of what they were doing it, but not about the code. And so this also suggests that in addition to publishing like source code that someone can download and operate and do their own thing with, that pushing a smart contract on an immutable blockchain and then having nothing further to do with it, probably has some good arguments. On the other hand, many people who have been in this kind of space also have some sort of system by which they make money off of it. That is where the problem lies. It needs to be navigated. So to truly navigate on this, right, is to find a really good cryptocurrency lawyer and figure that out. Because it's difficult to operate a business or a system where all you do is to publish the code and walk away.
Point out that one of the reasons that Tornado Cash got in such trouble, and Zcash, which is actually the foundation that invented most of the technology, that's their blockchain, is in part public relations. Zcash is actually pretty good at having a phone number that the police can call if they're curious about stuff, having some lawyers, to mention, and having a PR department. And then Tornado Cash people tried to essentially just hide and throw their hands up. This did not work out as well for them as it worked out with Zcash.
No, they got acquitted of 2 out of 3 charges.
True. So
Not all though.
That was actually a very significant victory, even though the only one remaining is unlicensed money services money transmitter.
And that's the other thing too, is if you were going to do this, you could go through the process to become a money services business under the US Bank Secrecy Act and try to do everything 100% legally. But I would make sure, 1, talk to a good lawyer, 2, you have good insurance, and 3, understand eventually if someone's misusing your code, you have a way to stop them from doing it. Because once you get knowledge of the misuse, then that could be, attached to you.
I guess that's hard with like a truly privacy preserving system in which you don't have the information to submit suspicious activity reports. But
Something like that,
Yeah.
maybe, or maybe just publishing something on a purely open source license, and you just go, oh, out into the good world, young man, and let them, let happen whatever happens.
All right, we're less than 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure we get the last couple of questions here if we can. Yeah.
I'd like to take a step back and ask a more basic question from a consumer's point of view. It's my understanding that if I want to park my money in a dollar-based stablecoin, I get no interest. Is that correct?
Sort of.
Okay, so from a consumer's perspective, why, other than possibly anonymity, why would I want to buy a Walmart or a Amazon stablecoin and get no interest when I can just use it US dollars, put it in my local bank and earn some interest?
So, or one of the things is I might say sort of, is that there's not, a lot of stablecoins are not giving you interest or yield or anything like that. But nevertheless, like if you have some US dollar coin, which is produced by Circle, and you hold it on Coinbase, Coinbase gives you a return on doing that. And I don't know exactly what their financial arrangement is. So, but in some cases, you may end up with a yield or return on it.
So I think the biggest thing is it just allows you to buy cryptocurrency more easily. So that's the benefit, right? Because some people do not want to keep investments in Bitcoin or Ethereum because of volatility. So what you can do is you can exit a position into USDC coin, and then it's stable. It doesn't move. Okay, and you're not putting dollars into Coinbase that may take some time and you might not be able to take it out. So I think it's more of like an anti-leverage play, right? So if you want to invest in cryptocurrency and you want to move from one cryptocurrency to another, there can sometimes be some efficiency in going from Bitcoin to USDC to Dogecoin, right? With trading fees and other things like that.
Can I add this? Remittances. So a very popular use case for cryptocurrencies is for people who are sending money overseas, supporting families elsewhere, and you can just send them a US dollar coin, and then they have it, and they can hold on to it there, where it might be that their local currency is plummeting, and so it's more that it's valuable to have it be stable, and you also don't have to pay Western Union like lots of money to transfer it. So there are other reasons why you might use a stable coin to transmit money overseas for a lot less than wire transfers or Western Union.
Thank you.
Next.
Hello. Just a quick question actually about some DeFi stuff. I kind of invested in the previous administration, and I kind of took a break from it, right? But I was kind of heavy on a lot of like the automated market makers, a lot of like yield farming, stuff like that. And I missed the first half of this panel. So is there anything in the new administration or any of the new policies that would affect that both in a positive and a negative way?
So right now, that's one of the things. The market structure bill is being drafted right now. There was a version passed by the House, and it's now the Senate is working on their own version, and those two versions will have to be reconciled before final bills. Still up in the air. Whether and to what extent it regulates DeFi is a big part of that question. So most of the bill is not about DeFi at all. And there are some who say basically to kick that can down the road and have a different bill to deal with DeFi later. Some people saying, well, we need to have a minimum amount of consumer protections on this. The way that it is not hitting those is by saying that wallet to wallet transactions from one custodial wallet to another self-hosted custodial wallet, or from self-hosted wallets to each other without an exchange is outside of the scope of the stablecoin bill, and it may be outside the scope of the market structure bill. And most DeFi operates in these manners, or can operate.
Okay, thank you.
Next question.
So, two questions actually. The first one is, on August 18th, US Treasury put out a notice of proposed rule. So technically, this is not a proposed rule, but it's tied to the Genius Act, and they're asking for comments to do, I think, October of this year. So on that notice of proposed rule, there's a section in there that kind of concerns me. Because on the Genius Act, it says, it doesn't impact custodial wallets or non-custodial wallets, right? So wallet that you have. But on the question, they ask any innovative way to track for the purpose of money laundering anything that is off-ramping and on-ramping onto a non-custodial wallet. Yeah.
Well, good thing it's a notice of proposed rulemaking where you got to give a comment, so you could.
But the problem is,
comment about it.
I mean, the fact that they asked.
Well, I mean, I can tell you guys right now, as someone that has paid, or my companies have paid way too much money to ransomware threat actors. There are entities out there that are very, very good at tracking cryptocurrencies, specifically Bitcoin. I saw a demo once where I used a Bitcoin address that was not connected to any major exchange or anything like that, and I put it in, and it came out with my name and address. So they are very, very sophisticated with tracking. You can look up various companies that do this, and Bitcoin is anonymous, but it's still public. So other cryptocurrencies, Zcash, Monero, things like that, are privacy based. But I think the expectation of privacy in cryptocurrency transactions is much less. The expectation is much more than what it is in reality. So if you've ever sold cryptocurrency and it's gone to a bank account, there's a way to track that.
I'm going to ask you to hold your second question until after the panel so we can get to it like 1 minute. So I want to make sure we get the last question.
So, guess I don't really know how I'm gonna phrase the question, but, so I think part of the problem is, the way the government views money as it currently is and what cryptocurrency has done to money, effectively changing it. So when the government taxes people, they're doing it based off the movement of cash, because that's the only way they can get a hold of it, right? The cryptocurrency, regulating it becomes much more of a problem because when it's digitized, it could basically teleport. So I think effectively what's going to end up having to happen in the government is they're going to have to basically make taxation unconstitutional and find a way to fund the government through other means. Now, I mean, you laugh at that, but is it actually a crazy idea?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so. It's technically you are taxed by crypto to crypto purchases and exchanges. If I take Bitcoin and purchase Ethereum, that is a tax event. So it's not just when how they track it typically is, okay, you send your Bitcoin to Coinbase and you cash it out. But generally, if you are staking Ethereum and you win a block proposal, that is income that should be taxed reported to the IRS.
And no government is ever going to say, no, thank you, we don't want your taxes.
Well,
They're going, what we're looking at
Yeah.
is a way to start regulating and tracking and coordinating those tiny little events.
Well-
We want to regulate the coins, not
Right, that, I don't
go the
think,
opposite direction.
I think, things like the regulation, their value could be self-inserted. So a lot of what government positions do now anyways is they get civilians to come in and do things. They actually get professionals to come in and do the things that they want done. But I think there's no way crypto can have fair treatment, basically, with the direction they're going in. Now, what they're gonna have to come up with, I'm guessing, is gonna be like a hybridization of what seems like a managerial system and a shareholder system. Because they still think someone has to be responsible. There's no way you can get people to not want to be responsible, for the stuff that goes on, especially in cryptocurrency. I mean, it's true, all the people get scammed and all that stuff and all the rest of it, but, I don't think the government will actually be the most, because they're not currently doing it. They're not gonna be the most effective means to, make sure our crypto's actually safe. So,
All right. Thank you for your comment. We are well over time now.
Sorry about
So,
that.
thanks everybody for coming, and be sure to rate this session so that we get more resources that can come back here next year.